Okay. I'm going to call the Star City Council meeting to order. It's Tuesday, January 18th, 2022. It is 7:01 p.m. If I can please have you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible.
Okay, tonight's invocation is by Bishop Jason Myers from the Stars First Ward, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Thank you, Mr. Myers, or Bishop Myers, for coming.
Thanks. Our dear, kind, and gracious Heavenly Father, we come before thee at this time, grateful for the opportunity that we have to live in this free land, to worship as we may, and also make decisions. We ask that that would help and bless those that are making decisions tonight, that they may be guided by thy Spirit. We're here for the opportunity to present our thoughts and our impressions. We'd ask that we may be civil in our discourse. Heavenly Father, we are mindful of those who are struggling, who are sick, and would ask that that would help us, that we may be able to help the hands that hang low. Heavenly Father, we are grateful once again for all that thou hast given us, and ask for thy blessings upon this city and this community. And we say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, sir. Roll call.
Hershey. Here. Wheelock. Yes. Chadwick.
Here.
Salmonson.
Here.
Nielsen. Present.
Okay, all's present. We are going to do a presentation. Is that correct there, Mr. Qualls? Is Amy doing it? Is Amy Manning? Oh, there you are. Okay. Did you want that presentation that was in the packet pulled up?
I actually have a hard copy for each of you.
Okay. Yep. But I will also pull it up just so everybody else can see it, I believe. Oh my goodness. All right. Okay. All right, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Mayor, Council. I appreciate the opportunity of being here. I'm Amy Manning, Executive Director of the AAA. AAA is the self-funded health trust that the city joined just recently. So you'll see me on site once a year to give you an annual report of the trust and how it's performing. So this information is from last year. We run on an October to September fiscal year to match the same as all of our agencies. So I'll go through this quickly. I know you have a busy night ahead of you. First page is just a letter from me that's an overview of the year. You can see some quick highlights on the side. We finished the year with 4,810 members, 83 agencies. We have 100% retention. And we created a couple of new programs that led to $516,000 worth of savings for the trust last year. The next two pages are a list of our agencies and to the Board of Trustees. There were, again, 83 agencies at the end of the year. I can tell you as of starting January 1st, we have 87 agencies, so the trust continues to grow. The next page shows your AAA team. So you can see the staff, a brief description of what each of us do. And if you have any questions at any time, please just let me know. Page 8 and 9 goes into administration. You'll see some little blurbs throughout the report, and those are some comments that we get. We get great comments from from our members often, and so we've pulled a few of those and put them into the report this year to share them with the elected officials. So you can see that the employees and members are very happy with the benefits they have. Administratively, just a few highlights. We have 8 new policies that were added or amended this year by the board. Staff attended 5 different conferences, had 110 training hours. We worked 5% over full time, so you can see we're very busy. Out of our membership, 21 of our total members are on COBRA, 22 are retirees, and the staff cost is 1.6% of the total budget. On page 9, our growth shows our growth over the last 3 years. So you can kind of see the trend on that. We've continued to grow significantly. There were 26 agencies that I rated last year. 13 of those joined. On pages 10 and 11 is a breakdown of 2 of the programs that we started last year. The first one is the Medication Infusion Benefit Program. We have a small group of members that have one of these diagnoses listed there in the middle of page 10, and they have an acute form of that. It requires them to have a medical infusion in a hospital setting, anywhere from every 8 weeks to twice a year. I had our data analyst, Megan, run a test claim on those last year because we're self-funded, which means, we're completely independent. When you're self-funded, you hire a third-party administrator, so you rent a network. We rent our network from Blue Cross of Idaho. We also rent a pharmacy network, and that's from Proact, a company out of New York. So we have 2 different sets of contracts we use, one for pharmacy and one for medical. So I had her, those are typically run through the medical benefit. So I had her run a test claim through Proact just to see cost of medication difference. There was a significant difference. It was much less expensive to buy it through Proact. So we created a program. We worked with 2 hospitals that agreed to help us with this infusion benefit, where we order the medication in and then they administer it. We pay them to administer it. That program has led us from December 1st is when it launched through the end of September. We saved $472,000 by instituting that program. We also have the St. Alphonsus Maternity Benefit Program. Again, we ran test claims through St. Alphonsus and St. Luke's. We found that there was a savings for babies that were delivered at St. Alphonsus. We do not want to discourage members from using whatever network that they want. And we don't narrow our network, but we do give an incentive for those who choose to deliver at St. Al's, and they do get a reimbursement on some of their expenses for that. And that program has saved us $44,000 last year. On page 12 and 13, we have an extensive wellness program. We have 2 different nurse practitioners that we contract with in the state. And they go to every agency within the state in the fall of every year, and they do a wellness screening, blood pressure check, pull labs, do things like that, administer a flu shot if one is wanted. And so they do meet all of our members. They also run a telehealth program for us, those same 2 nurse practitioners. There's no cost for your employees to use that telehealth program. It's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week available to them, and they will talk to one of those 2 nurse practitioners. We had 1,436 telehealth calls last year. During our wellness screenings, we found 1 stage 1 prostate cancer, 1 stage 1 colon cancer. So those continue to be very important that we run those on-site screenings. It's important to the members for us to catch these early. Of course, it's important to the trust as well. We also work with some of the agencies and send a mental health provider on site at the same time as the wellness screening for those agencies that are interested in doing that, because we do have a robust mental health program as well. Page 14 and 15 talks a little bit about our mental health program. We administer our own internal EAP program. If you saw in our membership, about half of the trust are first responders, because many of our cities have first responders, and then we have several first responder agencies that are also members districts. And about 2 years ago, we had a 12-month period of time where we had 3 completed suicides within our first responders families in the AAA. One was in northern Idaho, one in central, and one in eastern Idaho. And at that time, we had been paying a company that we were renting an EAP network from. And we just found that they didn't have the services that we had been promised. And it became important that we created our own, and that we were doing quality management within that, making certain that the providers were culturally competent to be treating the things that we were asking them to do. So we did hire a consultant, Dr. Stephen Odom in Shift Wellness. He's a psychologist who helped us create this robust program that we have. We now today actually have over 200 EAP providers in the network, and 40 of those are specialized in first responders. We created a first responder helpline. Those calls all go directly to Dr. Odom or one of his 3 senior staff members. The helpline has received 98 calls from AAA members this year. 12 of those were crisis calls. We've had 530 EAP visits. We've had 15 of our members go inpatient treatment since February 1st. Out of that 15, 4 of them were employees, 2 were spouses, and 9 were children. I don't think that it's probably a surprise to any of you that we do have a mental health crisis, especially among our youth right now. And we are certainly seeing it in the trust, and we have a lot of resources available to help them. So we just, we're really proud of this program that we created. It was important that we created at the time that we did. And we've been able to help a lot of our families and employees through this program. On page 16 and 17 goes into our budget and finance. You can see the budget has also grown over the last 3 years. This mirrors our growth in membership. The trust did end the year in the positive. We didn't expect that. We do have a surplus set aside. We expected to use part of the surplus last year, certainly because some of the high claims we've had, COVID has impacted the trust. But we ended in the positive due to these 3 bubbles at the bottom. Our growth was a little higher than we anticipated. Our pharmacy rebates came in higher than we expected. And we did receive a reimbursement from the state of Idaho, from those federal funds that they received for some of our COVID expenses, which led to not having to use any of our surplus last year, which was good news. On our finance page 17, IBNP, it stands for incurred but not paid. It is an amount that is determined by an actuary, a statistician for insurance rates. And that amount is monitored by the Idaho Department of Insurance. It's set aside at all times. That's what our amount was last year. This trust owns 30 CDs with varying interest rates. And then this chart on the bottom of page 17 is the renewal chart. The green line represents the trend, or that trend is the term used for inflation. The inflation rate on medical claims and drug costs averages about 8% a year in the state of Idaho. It's a little higher nationally. The blue line represents the AAA renewal over that same time period. So you see the trust ran very well. Now, we do remind all of our agencies, it is important that you budget for trend, that you budget in that 8 to 10% each year. We release our renewal in June, and we try to always beat that, but it is important that you budget for that inflation rate. And then we try to manage things in a way to beat that each year. Page 18 and 19. The reason why self-funding works so well is because 1 out of every 3 to 5 years, you're going to have a bad year. The city of Star will. So will each agency. The reverse is also true. Those other years are good years. And we can set aside money in a surplus so we can help smooth those out. The trust itself will also have 1 out of every 3 to 5 years, the trust itself will have a bad year. So that's why we put some of those funds aside and to smooth those. I want to show you a quick snapshot of high claimants for last year to give you an idea of what we see. Just some of our claimants that are over $100,000. This list is not complete. This was only as of September 30th. We continue to get claims clear until we're just now finishing getting claims that were dated in September. So there's a run out period with those. And so these are not complete. This is just giving you an idea of some of our high claimants for the year and what we're seeing. On page 19 talks a little bit again about pharmacy benefit manager. I mentioned we use ProAct. We use Blue Cross of Idaho as our third party administrator, some of the things that they do for us. And then COVID-19. On the bottom of page 19, I mentioned it has been a significant impact to us. This was again through September. You can see that we had spent almost $1.6 million on COVID treatment and testing. We did receive a reimbursement of some of those funds. As of today, we're over $2 million on spend on COVID costs. So we will be applying. You'll hear from us. We're going to be sending you a letter to share with your representatives, your legislators, because we are going to request from the state some more of those funds back from that federal money that's available to help curb the cost of COVID. As public agencies, we really didn't have the ability to protect ourselves like the private sector did. You know, many people in the private sector could send employees home and have them work from home. We couldn't close down cities. We couldn't stop plowing roads in our highway districts. Certainly our first responders had to be at work. So we had a higher rate and incident, more testing, more expenses because we are all public agencies that take care of our communities. So we will be requesting some more of those funds. We'll have our reports done by the end of this month for that, and we'll let you know. So do you have that completes the report? We try to give you, a little bit of information about everything that we're working on. Hopefully you learned something from this and you found it valuable. Is there any concerns or questions that you have for me?
Any questions of Miss Amy? No, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Have a great evening, and it was nice being here with you.
Yeah, you're invited to stay if you want.
I was on city council for 10 years and I was a
Oh,
mayor for
so you're
8 years.
So you're fully
So
aware.
I did 18 years of this. I know what you have ahead of you tonight.
Thank you.
You can keep those or toss them. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to item 5, the consent agenda. Anybody want to approve it? Deny it?
Mayor Chadwick,
Councilman Nielsen,
I move that we approve the consent agenda consisting of item 5A, approval of claims provided and previously approved. 5B, June 15th, 2021 City Council meeting minutes. 5C, the findings of fact and conclusion of law for the East River Ranch subdivision. And 5D, final plots, American Star Phase 3.
okay, we got a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we got a motion, a second. Any further discussion?
Mayor, I
Councilman Wheelock.
wasn't on the council in June, so I'd abstain from anything that's
For item 5B.
that
You got that, Mr. Jacob? Okay. Any further comments, questions? Okay, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries. On to item 6A, ordinance TBD -2022. Need to dispense of the rules? Oh, I'm sorry. Do we have to dispense of the rules on this one? Yes.
Somebody needs to introduce.
Okay,
Mayor Chadwick.
Councilwoman.
So I move, or I introduce ordinance to be determined 20-2022, an ordinance amending chapter 9 of Title 1 of the Star City Code designating an official newspaper, repealing ordinances in conflict and creating for severability and providing for an effective date.
So we got a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we got a motion, a second. Any further discussion? Jacob, do you want to talk about this? Or Chris?
Chris, did you get my stuff?
This is we're switching newspapers from the Idaho Statesman to the Idaho Press for official newspaper because of problems and publications.
So not only that, but they're actually published in Canyon County. We are in both counties. Idaho Statesman is no longer published in Ada County.
Correct. And we have to read this 3 official times then,
So she's moved to introduce it. Next, we'll have a motion we'll vote. A motion to suspend the rules. We'll vote again. Then we'll read the title
and then approve it.
and then. approve it.
Okay. All right. A little different. All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Hershey. Aye. Wheelock.
Aye.
Salmonson.
Aye.
Nielsen.
Aye.
Okay, that motion carries. Now dispensing of the rules.
I'll do it.
Okay,
Mr. Mayor, I move that pursuant to Idaho Code Section 50-902, the rule requiring an ordinance be read on 3 different days with 1 reading being full be dispensed with, and that ordinance number to be determined Be considered after reading once by title only.
Okay,
It's the number, not the title.
we got a motion. We got a second.
Second,
Got a motion, a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Hershey,
Aye.
Wheelock.
Aye.
Simonson,
aye.
Nielsen.
Aye.
Okay, that motion carries. Now the approval of the ordinance. Correct. No, the council could read it when they make a motion.
Mayor Chadwick.
Councilwoman?
I move to approve the ordinance to be determined -2022. An ordinance and read the whole thing.
Yep.
An ordinance amending the chapter 9 of Title 1 of the Star City Code, designating an official newspaper, repealing ordinances in conflict, creating for severability and providing for an effective date.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second by Councilman Hershey. Is that correct? Okay, I couldn't, I don't know if I heard that. Any further discussion?
Mayor Chadwick.
Councilwoman?
In section 1, I think that it's the paper, it's just referenced as Press Tribune. And I think it needs to say the Idaho Press Tribune.
Oh, gotcha, right there where we cross out Idaho Statesman?
Yep.
Okay. Do we need to amend the motion? No, okay. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, roll call.
Hershey.
Aye.
Wheelock.
Aye.
Simonson,
Aye.
Nielsen.
Aye.
Okay, that motion carries. On item 6B, ordinance 352-2022 for the Rooster Hollow subdivision.
Mayor Chadwick,
Councilman Nielsen?
are we going to follow the same outline as we just did?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Fine, I'll do that then. I move to introduce ordinance number 352-2022 Rooster Hollow subdivision annexation and development agreement, RZ 21-03, DA 21-18.
Okay. We got a motion? We got a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, a motion, a second. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, roll call.
Hershey.
Aye.
Wheelock.
Aye.
Simonson,
Aye.
Nielsen.
I,
Okay, that motion carries. We need to dispense of rules.
I'll do that.
Okay,
I move that pursuant to Idaho Code Section 50-902, the rule requiring an ordinance to be read on 3 different days with 1 reading to be in full be dispensed with, in that ordinance number 352-2022 be considered after reading once by title only.
okay, we got a motion. We got a second.
Second.
Okay, Councilwoman Solomon seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, roll call.
Hershey.
Aye.
Wheelock.
Aye.
Simonson,
Aye.
Nielsen.
I,
Okay, that motion carries. Now we need
Mayor
approve the
Chadwick,
ordinance. Councilman Nielsen?
I move that we approve ordinance 352-2022 Rooster Hollow subdivision annexation and development agreement, RZ 21-03, DA 21-18, and ordinance rezoning certain real property located in the city of Star, more specifically located at 6794 West State Street, Highway 44, Canyon County parcels R34015 00000 and R34015 in Star, Idaho, rezoning the property from mixed use MUDA to commercial C2 PUD-DA and residential R-5 PUD-DA with a development agreement. The properties are owned by Don E. Bodiford and Barbara Bodiford and contain approximately 14.38 acres, directing that certified copies of this ordinance be filed as provided by law, providing for related matters and providing for an effective date.
Okay, we got a motion. We have a second.
Second.
So we got Councilman Wheelock as a second. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, roll call.
Hershey.
Aye.
Wheelock.
Aye.
Simonson,
Aye.
Nielsen.
I,
Okay, that motion carries. On to item 7A. Just real quick before we begin this, I want to make sure everybody's signed up that wants to speak back there on the sheets in the back. If you want to speak, please do so here. We're going to open the public hearing, reopen the public hearing for the Langtree Bungalow subdivision. Just real quick, just a refreshing of our public hearing process. I will reopen this public hearing. I'm going to ask the council if they have any ex parte contact or communication. The applicant will have up to 20 minutes to present their project. The council can ask the applicant questions and staff questions. Then we'll get to public testimony where it's 3 minutes per person. And our clerk, Jacob Walls here will track your time. The applicant will then have, the council may ask the individual speaking follow-up questions that does not count towards their 3 minutes. The applicant will have a 10-minute rebuttal. The council can ask the applicant and staff questions. I will then close the public hearing and the council will deliberate to either approve with conditions, deny, or table the application to a date certain in the future. So I do appreciate everybody coming and participating. We do have some folks, I believe, online that are participating too. One person online that's going to participate as well. And we'll have them participate at the end of all the individuals that are here to speak. So with that being said, it is 7:26. I'm going to reopen the public hearing for the Langtree Bungalow subdivision. It was previously tabled from October 5th, 2021, I believe. And I'm going to ask the council if they have any ex parte contact or communication regarding this application.
None.
I've had one subdivision behind them complain to me or converse with me about it. And that was before I was ever elected.
Okay, so in that case, is it going to impact your ability
Just full
to?
disclosure,
Yeah,
Could you describe the context of that conversation?
saying I think it'll be readdressed here tonight. They're here to re-vent, I guess.
Okay. If you don't hear it during public comment, will you just make sure that you let everybody know what you heard so that everybody's got a full opportunity to respond?
perfect. Okay, anybody else?
None.
None.
Okay, hearing none, we are going to have the applicant come up here to the podium. And Miss Deb, can you make sure that mic's pulled in so we can hear? I'm not sure how it's going across the internet there. And I think, do you have the little
Yes, right
dongle
here, the
there?
clicker.
Okay, yep, thank you.
Okay. Mayor, members of the council, Deborah Nelson, my address is 601 West Bannock. Here on behalf of the developer, other members of the development team are with me as well and are available to answer any of your questions. I just want to start with a list that former council member Keys was so kind to list at the end of the last hearing. I thought this might be useful to recap where all of the discussion was and the request from the city council and how we've updated it. And so here we'll start with emergency access must not be to the north. That has been changed in the preliminary plat, and I'll show that to you. It is now to the east. The council asked us to widen the private streets to 36 feet instead of the requested 33, and that has been done. The council noted that the gates were acceptable. The easement for the pathway along the foothill ditch is acceptable to the developer. They did continue to work with the ditch company and did not get permission to put a pathway there themselves. But they are agreeable to the council's request to provide an easement at such time as the city is able to get their master pathway approved there. We agree to pave our portion of the pathway that runs along the east boundary that will then provide safe access to the school sites to the northeast, along with the adjacent property that has the same burden on their property. We have changed at Councilmember Salmonson's good suggestion, this to be a free market housing development rather than the 55 restriction for a number of reasons. I think as the reasons that were discussed during that hearing, where we're so adjacent to the schools, it really will accommodate families and provide that great access. Also with the widening of the streets and other reasons. So we'll go through a few of these. It made sense to the developer as well. We have confirmed we are not in the floodplain and there are no jurisdictional wetlands on the site. And those documents have all been provided in the record. In fact, they were provided in the record long ago, but we've refreshed to make sure they're there now. We've continued to work with the Middleton Irrigation Ditch Company on the west side of the property about that piped facility that was discussed at the last hearing. We will keep the Northwest Park area in a more natural state. That was requested of us. And we are providing permanent buffering on the north boundary. So I'll go through some more details on this, but those were all of the requests. And we have agreed to all of them. So this slide will now become a great conditions of approval for you as well. To go through a few of these details, looking at the preliminary plat, you can see that the northern access, emergency access has been removed. It is now provided on the eastern boundary, and we have secured an easement from that adjacent eastern property. It will then go through their private driveway and out to a public street, and fire has approved this access point. Also, you can see the private road section here widened to 36 feet as requested. As mentioned, we are going to switch away from the 55 plus restriction. Of course, the amenities and homes and location may still appeal to a multi-generational homes here, but proximity to schools does seem to appeal to provide some families. And so we will, especially with that pathway that's going through there, the open fencing, the wider roads, we'll have 1- and 2-story homes and amenities that will appeal to a variety of homeowners. Again, we have confirmed the Corps has approved that there are no jurisdictional wetlands. There is no wetland mitigation required within the property. There is no floodplain on the property. The maps have all been amended. You can see that it's pretty far to the east now. So there is no restriction on this property. I think there was a lot of discussion at the last hearing that this is really not necessarily part of the city council's review at this stage. This is more of a further engineering discussion that comes along with final plat. But nonetheless, we did want to give you the update of our continued discussions between our engineer and Alan Funkhauser about this facility, that the easement will be reduced with the piping of that facility actually on both properties, Hope Place to our west and on our property. And all of the facilities will continue to fit. The piped facility will be in the same location as the open ditch so that it continues to connect appropriately down at the Floating Feather intersection. And the fence line on our property will be outside of that easement area. We have revised our landscape plan to confirm that this northwest corner park area will remain in a more natural state with a natural walking pathway down to the pickleball court and preserving existing trees. And then focused on the buffering to the north, wanted to start with the transition zone and the definition. This is in the staff report that was provided as well when Sean outlined all of the applicable code sections. I think this definition is really important for this project because it talks about that transition will be determined on a case-by-case basis, considering all of the circumstances around. And in particular, where it's not required is if you've got separation created by a roadway or a canal, where you end up with structures that are equal to or exceed 100 feet from the new structures. Here, we have not a formal roadway or canal, but we certainly have a natural gulch. We also have a considerable distance. And here in particular, we have over 500 feet between structures to the nearest structure to our north here. So well over the 100 feet that's considered when you're looking at where it's appropriate as you consider your case-by-case analysis. Again, looking at another section of your code, and this is also repeated in your comprehensive plan, even if transition were appropriate here, your code allows multiple ways for you to achieve that as you look at that case-by-case circumstances. And you're looking to transition to directly abutting rural residential lots. These ways include a change in lot size, a change in setbacks, or the provision of a buffer strip. And that's exactly what is provided here. There are only 3 directly abutting rural residential lots to this development. On the far west, Mr. Northrup borders the property, but he only borders the natural open space park that is over 2 acres in size. He also has the visual buffer created by the natural existing mature landscaping there in the gulch. And his house is over 500 feet from the nearest structure. The other 2 directly abutting rural residential lots are owned by the developer, as was discussed at the last hearing, who has agreed to permanently deed restrict both of those properties to preserve a 100-foot no-build buffer along the southern portion of those properties and along the northern portion of this development, creating that buffer that is allowed by your code where transition is appropriate. The neighbors to the north have submitted a new letter by their attorney, Mr. Hawes, who suggests that this provision to provide this buffer would be an illegal imposition onto county property. And so I just want to briefly address that. That argument has no legal merit. There is nothing illegal about a property owner willingly suggesting submitting their own property to a deed restriction to provide this buffer. There is nothing illegal about the city accepting as a condition of approval for the development to the south in a recorded development agreement that buffer has to stay in place for this development to continue to have that transition. And that's if you even deem that transition is appropriate for that far distance. But it's certainly not illegal. In fact, it's for the benefit of those properties. So the suggestion that they'd somehow have some inverse condemnation claim against the county for acting outside of the city's jurisdiction, it's for their benefit. The condition of approval applies to a development within the city, and it certainly is within your authority and appropriate for you to consider. So with that, I would stand for any questions.
Any questions of the applicant at this time?
I have one, Mr. Mayor.
Okay,
Yeah, I had a hard time recalling this one. It's because I had COVID that day. I remember now. I got better. I just still look bad. This 100-foot buffer, it's been throwing me ever since I've looked at it. That is not on this proposed property, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, that's one of my questions. Also, this was a 55 and older community,
That's correct.
and now it's not. And have you not reduced any density down? Because now you're going to bring in families and things like that. Because 55 and older community, I could see density being a little higher, to be quite honest. Have you reduced the density down from deciding it's not going to be that?
Councilmember Hershey, no, we haven't. It is still the same. It is still well within, excuse me, I'm sorry for the glasses. I forgot my glasses at home. So now I have to be the librarian that takes them on and off.
I'm going to grab mine in a minute.
Yeah. It's the density here is 3.8, which is well within the 3 to 5 that's called for in your plan. And so the density did remain the same. The open space here is well over what's required, both from a usable and from the overall. And so all of the code requirements still were met with the transition of the families. Now, we still think that with a variety of the home sizes and lots that are provided by this type of development, there still may be some, as I mentioned, multi-generational folks here, but it provides that flexibility.
Well, I also noticed on the, I don't know what side this is. It looks like the west side towards the south. You got an existing neighborhood there with 6 houses and you're putting 8 behind it. I would insist that it be at least a match and no more. Anytime you buffer somebody that's already existing, I don't like to see more houses next to it than what already are there. So if you have 6, I don't want to see more than 6. I count 8.
Councilmember Hershey, I appreciate the comment. I mean, they are also zoned comparably and have comparable density, but you're right, it's not exactly 1-to-1 there.
Yeah, I'm just telling you, I will not approve that for sure. That's all my questions for now.
so,
There'll be more.
okay.
Thank you.
Real quick, Ms. Deb, are you requesting setback waivers?
Mayor, thank you for that question because I failed to mention it. No, we are not. And they were originally partly to accommodate the 55 and up to have a different structure, and they are not doing that now. So no setback waivers.
So what would the widths be on these lots then? I
They
can't remember.
range.
Yeah.
Some of them are in the 50s, but are down to 50-foot wide, and they go up from there.
And
I-
these are, so Sean, these are like, our code's 5 feet side. Yeah, okay. Okay, any further questions of the applicant at this time? Councilwoman?
Yep, thank you. So we've had a few, well, I noticed a parking lot for the clubhouse. It is perpendicular to the street, and we've had some other projects come in, and ACHD required us to reconfigure the parking lot so they don't back out into the street. I know these are all private, but is it possible to reconfigure to so that they don't back us directly out into the street from that parking lot?
And Councilmember Salmonson, I recall that from last week, but I think it is because it's private. ACHD did not raise any concern, but I'm sure the developer is open to, looking at the parking alignment to see what can fit there.
Okay. And then my other question was about the pickleball court. Just curious on the location. It seems like it's a little bit out of the way. In my opinion, it seems like it might be more usable if it was in another green space. Was there a reason that it was placed there, or I don't know. I was just thinking about functionality and people using it. But that was also back when it was a 55 and older. So now that has changed.
Yeah, I think, and the developer can add more to this if they have other points, but I think the idea is to spread out the amenities so that there's a variety of locations for amenities throughout the development.
Yeah.
Okay, any further questions, Councilwoman?
Nope. And then all my other questions were answered in your presentation.
Okay,
Thank you.
Councilman Wheelock?
Okay, some of the things I have questions on is with the pickleball being put closer to the residents of Star, whatever that is, subdivision, to the north, having a skate park by my residence, the activities that go on there are adjusting my lifestyle from the amount of people that are just outside recreating, I guess. And that impacts the residents to the north that are not in this subdivision. I would encourage it to be moved closer to your side of the subdivision would be my recommendation. And I understand it's 500 feet. I have 500 feet between me and the neighbors, and it's still not enough for me, but I get that. And with that, the same buffer zone that's outside this property, if it were on your property, they would enjoy a little more buffer from this subdivision. Those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Councilmember, thank
Okay.
you.
Any further comments or questions at this time for the applicant? Okay, hearing none, do we have the sign-up sheet? And Ryan, we still have just one online? Okay. Okay. Give me just a second here. All right, so we'll start here at the top. Mohaw's. And again, please state your guys' name and address for the record. And our clerk, Jacob Qualls, will indicate when you're close to 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. My
Thank
name's Mo Hawes. I'm an attorney with Morris Bauer and Hawes. We represent a few of the residents in the Shriner subdivision. Our address is 1305 North 12th Avenue Road, Nampa, Idaho, 83687. Council members, I appreciate the time to address you, and I want to tell you that I admire the amount of focus that you've given this. I know you've really dug in deep on trying to address some competing concerns here, and I admire your willingness to tackle hard questions. And also, Mr. Nickel, your office has been really easy to work with in terms of sharing information, and I appreciate that. I sent a letter this morning to your planning and zoning administrator, which I requested be sent to you. I'm not sure if you've had a chance to read that. We were a little bit late getting it to you, so I apologize. I do want to address some of the things that the applicant has raised, and they're also addressed in the letter. First of all, the only issue I'm here to discuss is the buffer. My clients have made clear that they make no general objection to the development besides its impact on their subdivision. And currently that impact is felt most severely with the buffer zone. The applicant made a scathing assessment of my legal analysis, and I wouldn't ask you to supplant my legal analysis with your own attorney, but I do think it is sound and that you understand that the Shriner subdivision is not within the city of Star. And so I'm here on behalf of people who you don't represent, but whose lives are impacted by the decisions you make on the issues that they raise. We are not aware at this point of any annexation or attempted annexation of Mr. Walsh's 2 lots within the Shriner subdivision. That's significant because it goes to my legal assessment of the legality of this proposed buffer strip. So the first point is jurisdiction, which I've covered. The Idaho Constitution is clear, Idaho Code is clear, and case law is clear that your jurisdiction extends to your city limit. If Mr. Walsh has not annexed the 2 lots in the Shriner subdivision, then there would be no way for this body to enforce or for the city to enforce that buffer going forward. It would be squarely within the jurisdiction of Ada County, and Ada County is not acquiesced to enforcing that buffer. That's really significant because unlike applicant's assessment that there would be no issue with a private landowner granting a covenant, a restrictive covenant on their land for the benefit of another, issues may arise, and I'll get to those shortly. But I want to talk specifically about your city comprehensive plan and your city code, because I think the applicant conveniently ignores language, choosing only the language that benefits their claim. And a rule of statutory construction is to read it all as a whole. And I think it was passed by this body as a whole. So I want to point to policy 8.5.3 and 8.5.4. I won't read that language because you're aware of it and you can interpret it as well as I can. But when it comes to your municipal code, 8-1, E-1, which is up on the board, what this says is the size of a new residential lot when being proposed adjacent to an established residential use. Keep that in mind in connection with 8.3-3B3, which reads, when development is planned with lots that directly abut existing lots within a rural residential area or special transition overlay area, et cetera, et cetera. The point in your comprehensive plan and in the code provisions I shared is 2-part. One, we're supposed to make a correlation to the lots, not to how far away a house is within an existing lot. In the Shriner subdivision, the houses are further away from their property boundaries than the proposed bungalow houses will be. But you can't measure 500 feet from a house because the ordinance says lot to lot. So we would say that the other thing you can glean from your comprehensive plan and from the provisions I've just cited is that the purpose behind them, as I read it, and it may be different for you, but the purpose is for the proposed subdivision to absorb the transitional overlay, to absorb the buffer, not for any historic lot to absorb that buffer. The next, I'm up with, if I may, I'm representing 3 here, Maxine McCombs, Marianne Saunders, who is not here, and Leroy Swanson.
Mayor Chadwick,
Councilman Nielsen.
I'd like to ask questions and ask the counselor to remain.
Okay. So we'll give you 5 minutes on that.
I won't even take that
much.
much of your
Good.
time. I just want to speak to the annexation issue, which is where the legal claim of inverse condemnation arises. First of all, the Shriner subdivision has amended their CC&Rs to restrict any Category A voluntary annexation of a lot within the subdivision. Additionally, for any city to independently annex a single lot out of a subdivision would be inherently problematic, and litigation could certainly arise. But where it pertains specifically to the buffer is where Mr. Walsh is the owner fee simple of the 2 lots in Shriner subdivision, but the Walsh Group is the owner of the proposed subdivision. If the Walsh Group ever purchases or Mr. Walsh conveys that property to the Shriner subdivision, under Idaho's doctrine of merger, the restrictive covenant is extinguished. There is no more buffer. If, on the other hand, Mr. Walsh decides to sell his land in the Shriner subdivision to another homeowner who elects not to observe the buffer, we have an issue of enforcement between the county and the city and a potential claim of inverse condemnation against the city of Star because of the restrictive covenant that was applied to the land as a condition precedent to preliminary approval or ultimate approval of this project. Beyond that, I would just welcome any questions that you may have.
Councilman Nielsen?
Thank you. So pertaining to the code that's up on the screen here, you rightly discussed in the first sentence that we're talking about a residential lot. And as I read through this, and I'm curious and I want to understand because I'm not a lawyer, right? But as I read through this, further, it talks about the ratio of lots. So again, we're talking about lots, not structures. But this final sentence, to me, seems to be really important as well. This referring to this 8-1E-1 shall not be required if separated by an existing roadway or a large canal where the distance between new structures. Now we're talking about structures and not lots.
Sure.
So the proximity of structures to each other seems to take precedent over the ratio of lots. Would you not agree?
I can definitely appreciate your reading of that. What I would point to is what this council in December 8th, 2020, adopted as a proposition of Councilman Keys, which was the chart that identified what the transitional overlay units would be when abutting rural lots, like in special transition overlay. And I recall, Councilman, that you seconded that proposition, and it has not been codified, so it remains merely a guiding star for this council. But what was clear to me was that the council's interpretation of these your ordinances was that there needed to be a buffer to protect existing landowners on these rural lots. And it wasn't so much predicated on the house. In fact, the chart doesn't predicate any of the distances or variances based on the house, but on the lot that's abutting, and that the absorption of the buffer would be within the actual proposed development.
Yeah, I recognize that. And you are correct, that hasn't been codified. That was part of a separate application, which those applications don't take, there's no precedent, there's no case law between applications at the city level. So understand where you're coming from on that. I just want to make sure that I'm reading this correctly. One of the things that you said kind of toward the end of your closing comments refers directly to the city making that buffer strip a condition of approval. That seems to be the key here, because the city doesn't have jurisdiction to require anything outside of city limits to be anything, right? There's no power or authority there. So if this were not a condition of approval, then we've got no problem. Is that your understanding?
If what you're saying is that there didn't have to be a buffer, it was within your discretion, and the proposed plan could go forward absent the buffer, there's no issue with the Shriner subdivision.
I'm not saying there's no issue with the Shriner subdivision,
But legal,
the legal argument that you're making here is all based on the city making this a condition of approval.
yeah, I appreciate that, and I'm sorry for interrupting you. I do agree with your position there that it would become a litigious issue if a condition precedent was predicated on having some sort of a covenant that runs with the land that applies to who has to maintain that buffer. I would still say that under the city code, arguments can be made that the buffer is required to protect those lots within the special transition overlay. And so something should be there, but that's a separate question. And I can certainly read where you can find that it's within your discretion, or you can read this last sentence to find that it is predicated on the distance between houses, not lots.
Well, I think we could do that based on that last sentence, but also in the case by case basis, the ratio of lots adjacent to the properties. And then in a comprehensive plan, the language is such that there may be this and there may be that. It does become kind of a council discretionary thing. So long as there's not a condition of approval.
Certainly.
Okay. We good? All right. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Bob Faylau. Hang on a second, Mr. Bob. I got to get yours up, but I got myself hooked in my chair. So, there we go.
You let me know.
Let's, oops. Let me pull that back up there. Is this it?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you. My name is Robert Faylau. I live at 2203 North Sunny Lane. I'm a resident of the transition overlay zone just to the northwest of this area. This is a drawing that is in the packet for the Langtree subdivision. I believe that it's very misleading. And I think that everybody's kind of covered this, but it shows the crosshatched area. You scroll down just a bit, it says that that's crosshatched. No, I'm sorry, up. Says that that is the crosshatched area is the transition overlay area. The area of the lots that are in the green with the trees around it is within the transition overlay area as well. Those are the lots that are also purchased from the Shriner subdivision. So that is misinformation there. That is also the transition overlay area. The transition boundary starts at that boundary. And in relationship to the lots, that boundary, that lot distinction is where the transition needs to happen. If you go to the next one. I thank Mr. Haas for making a very good points about the language of the UDC. And I think there's a couple points here. It says specifically the very top says that the UDC is determining the codes for the new developments. It says right in the very first line, the size of a new residential lot. Everything in this UDC is referring to the new proposed subdivision, not the existing lot that is north of this boundary. Therefore, any buffer has to be put within that new transition or in that new development, just as Mr. Haas said. And we totally agree. We've been speaking together with a lot of the people within the area of the transition, special transition area just to the north. And we've come up with a proposal or a petition that is, if you go down below, that's signed. This is, why you're going by there, that boundary is not just sensitive to the lots in the Shriner subdivision that Walsh is purchasing and prepare for this. All the lots within that Shriner subdivision are affected visually by the houses that will be right up against that transition overlay zone, which they shouldn't. Just where it's turned sideways, sorry, but just where the barn is on the left-hand side, these are structures that the developer has moved up from the old development. The houses would be basically at the back of that barn. All that entire row of houses that are right up against the transition overlay boundary. And that is a visual impact for the entire neighborhood, not just whoever lives in those two subdivisions, those two lots now, or in the future, because the future of the transition is really what the council is intending to propose to protect that transition for all of Star and for the future of Star. So we propose you have thanked us for suggesting actionable solutions. And our actionable solution to this is for him to just take all of those lots that are on that north side of that street that are up against that transition boundary and turn those into a permanent non-buildable buffer lot, just like every single other non-building open lot space has been done for every other division or development around the transition area. And that the developer is already doing in the lot just below the Northrop residence. So the developer's already understands that a permanent lot needs to be established to create that buffer. He's doing it below the John's house, but not at the transition area below the other lots. So we just propose that those be open space permanent. That would be 100-foot space, which is equal to what he's saying is a viable open space distance. And then the street, and then the houses, and then those houses. And I believe he said that all the houses in the entire subdivision were going to be single story. And that is important too. If within that buffer space, we also ask that there be visual barriers, berms, planted vegetation, so that everybody from the surrounding subdivision won't be looking at a big wall of houses right there, right up against the boundary. They'll be set back 100 feet plus the road with a berm and trees. And then that would be a viable alternative to the other requirement, which would be 1 acre lots right up against the transition zone, because that's what the council has been voting for in the past.
Okay.
For transition. So I agree a lot with what the last lawyer said in terms of defining where that buffer should be.
Okay.
And we have almost all the residents in the transition area to the north signed in on that petition, backing the fact that
Which we got a copy of that
Yeah.
here today too.
Yeah.
So thank you,
Are
sir.
there any?
Any questions of Mr. Faylau? Okay, hearing none. Did you get a copy of his presentation? Okay, good. All right. Okay, cool.
Okay. And no questions.
Nope, no questions. Here you go, Mr. Faylau, you want this
All right.
back?
Thanks.
Did you need a copy of that? Okay. Okay, oh, you got it. Thank you. Mr. Kurt Kraus. Did I say that right? Okay.
Ready to go?
Sir,
Mr. Mayor, Council.
just make sure you're speaking to that microphone so those online can hear too.
Okay, my name is Kurt Kraus, 9951 West Rolling Hills Drive. I also abut or close to abut the proposed subdivision. There's not much I can add. Mr. Haas and Mr. Fairhouse covered everything. I agree with Councilmember Wheelock on the pickleball court. It's odd that it's in the middle of a wildlife area or a area as a transition part of the area. I do also agree that, you know, the buffers that are created should be within the developer's property, not considering somebody else's property the buffer. I'm not going to take up any more of your time. I support the petition. My name's on it. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, sir. Let's see, Miss Carol Ward. Did Mr. Jacob get a copy already? Okay. All right, I'll take them for reference. Okay. And state your name and address, please, for the record, and then we will, when you get done, we got to give them to them so they can look at them as well. Okay?
Okay. I'm kind of short. Can people hear me?
Yes, we can
Okay.
hear you. Height doesn't matter as long as you're speaking in the microphone. You're okay.
Okay, my name is Carol Ward. I live at 2090 North Sunny Lane. And speaking all third on the pickleball court, because I'm going to be the one that will be closest to the pickleball court. And I really don't want all the noise of it. But something that I wanted to address also is that they said that they will preserve the trees, although as dense as that the development is north of the canal, I just don't see how they're going to be able to preserve the trees, which I would really like to see, because it destabilizes the soil once you start cutting down trees and digging up. And if you want to look there on exhibit C there, it talks about, that's just an illustration of what happens when you start to build in the hillside, because bear in mind that this is not flat property, it's a hill. And so what happened in the Boise subdivisions in the foothills, and that's going to be B. You can see how the sidewalks have all buckled, and then in exhibits A, there's houses have slid down, and all those houses had to be abandoned and torn down. So what Boise does, and I think this is a good idea, is to have the developers do a soil study, and then a second study is done by a company chosen by the city of whatever city, and then the developer pays for that, but that way there's no conflict of interest. So that you don't get that sliding. I'm also concerned about loss of wildlife habitat, especially pollinators. I had a poor crop of apples this past year, really good the previous year. I just wonder if it's loss of pollinators, because those cottonwoods and other plants along that area, in that area, are providing nectar and pollen. And I know there's people around me that keep bees, and I have fruit. And so we're going to lose a lot of that stuff. They also checked off that they didn't, that there's no unique plant life, but actually, I don't think anybody checked. And there's some species of plants like Ace's onion and so forth that are only found in northern Ada and southern Gem County foothills. Another thing that, and I don't see where that is on the map, but there's just below my property, there's a ditch that was constructed to carry away water from my irrigation, out of my irrigation pond. And I don't see that on there, and that's been all broken down. So that's, instead of being bulldozed, I don't know if that's going to be, it's going to be piped or whatever, but they need to account for that. So that's basically all I have. Any questions?
Any questions of Ms. Ward? Okay, no, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay.
And then, well,
Oh, yeah.
can you give them to Miss Deb so she can look at them? Okay. All right, Mr. John Northrup.
I'm not as short as Carol. Mayor and council members. I'm the property that's at the 510, sorry, John Northrup. I'm the property.
And address also.
2333 Stardust Farm Lane. That's my house, 510 feet. Originally I was coming here just to support a lot of the folks, just trying to really make sure that the buffer ends up in the new development area, not on a existing platted subdivision, because I just think that's how developments really work. Been around them for most of my career. My example that I wanted to share is, like, I know we just kind of recently went through the Moyle Estates property north of Beacon Light. We love that property. We didn't really have much issue with it. Nice houses, buffers, park strips, all the stuff that we all discussed. The Moyle still lives in the house on 10 acres next to it. So if a developer bought that 10 acres, could they go now, where now it's all being curbed and guttered, and buy the existing adjacent lots and consider that the buffer for whatever they wanted to build on the 10 acres? Doesn't make sense to me. Don't know if that's as clear as I can make it, but I don't know how you can buy homes in an existing platted subdivision and consider that your buffer. And thank you, Mr. Wheelock, Hershey. All of your comments are me. So, pickleball courts, the noise, all those other pieces. And again, I originally didn't have any problem and even mentioned it to the Walsh team with their product. But quite honestly, my initial thoughts of just trying to come in and talk about the transition zone, at this point, I'm more inclined to say reject it all, because it was kind of sold to us at all the neighborhood meetings, everything we've been attending since day one, that it was going to be a quiet subdivision, gated, single-story homes. We were kind of looking at the density issue with the same concerns that you had, Mr. Hershey. And unless that kind of comes back, I don't see how you could look at this without having to completely redo the whole thing. But that's my 2 cents. And I think I'm close to my 3 minutes. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir.
I have a question.
Mr. Northrup, Councilman Nielsen has a question.
So you talked about some of the other developments and that have been done, and the buffering, and other people have mentioned that buffering as well. My recollection of those is that with the buffering elements that we put into those other developments, sometimes we're between 75 and 100 feet of buffering.
If I recall, that one is that Sunfield that had the berm put in as well, so it had a berm. And then
Sure.
the limit distance.
Yeah. So I'm curious. I mean, this is far more than 75 to 100 feet currently.
To an existing property, or see, I still come back to, I remember I went back and listened to our December 8th council meeting that we had here. And you, Solomon, and several people, when they were looking at the keys chart, when they were just talking abutting a lot, you even wanted to increase them. So anything from 1 acre to a half an acre. So that's why I don't know how you look at this and see 7 acres and say there should be R4 next to a 7 acre parcel.
Well, if I may get to my question, the buffering isn't between lots. The buffering is absorbed in a lot, the applicant's property. Yet the distance is always between structures that we've been discussing, and that's the intent, is to provide that distance between structures. So I'm just curious, where there is so much distance between structures, why and you've got an applicant who owns property in your subdivision who's offering to keep that as a buffer. It's created 3 times the buffering that we've had in other applications.
So I split my land with you guys about 3.5 years ago, and it was 10 acres. And so I held with what I considered in the neighborhood and just asked that it be 2 5-acre lots, because all of the adjacent properties were large lots, country living.
Are you in the city of Star?
I'm not, I'm section land.
So you split it with the county then?
I did.
Yeah. I'm just curious that the distance is, like I said, it's 3 times greater. And you've got a neighbor who's, basically asking you to work with them on that. Sure. So
Well, part of that is
the difference
transitional densities, because noise, we already have the school. So, quite honestly, that's a lot of noise that already is. And we knew it was happening. We saw that the land got sold out to the school. But again, now you're talking about having a 55 and older community that was sold to us for this density as a very quiet, we're going to be a super quiet neighborhood with 1-story homes. That is not what they're discussing anymore. And that's when those densities, as Hershey mentioned, he was talking about the part down below where you're looking at adjacent lots, it's 1 acre.
Talking about lots lining up with each other.
Yeah, and so where's the lot lining up with the northern boundary? That's what we're asking. And generally, when you see a lot, if you look at all the other ones that have been adjacent to the special transition overlay area, it's a separate lot set aside as a lot. So you still have that lot to lot change, which we don't have.
And again, I'm not taking a position here. I'm really trying to understand, because the circumstances in those are different than the circumstance. This is a different circumstance that we've seen before.
Sure.
And usually it's the people who own those lots that are abutting the development that are, speaking the loudest for, I want that transition. And you are the only one here, aside from the applicant, that actually abuts the development. And yeah, you've got 3 times the amount of distance. So I'm just trying to understand what's really at the heart of where you're coming from. And I appreciate
noise and density at this point, because really I was here to support the buffer and my neighbors, because they've supported me on what we were trying to get accomplished before. And that's what worries me, is that it just seems like we went everything that had been discussed since I had an email I was looking over from Sean in March, asking how can you have this, density and this buffer change inside of a platted subdivision, and just still doesn't make sense to me, because I've never seen where you have a file plat that and CCNRs on a subdivision and have somebody burden that, with a buffer. Where again, my Moyle Estates, again, I don't want to make a tax loophole for a developer to come in and say, well, I've got this piece of land, if I can go buy all these lots that are supposed to be, single family homes, can I put a buffer and use that like right up to the back door and get 30 or 40 extra feet and increase the density in my development? I don't know. I mean, that's what you guys are looking at in my mind right now.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from on that. I think what I'm trying to understand is where you abut to this neighborhood, there is no lot. But yeah, where the owner of those lots abuts to it.
It'll be the pickleball court where the 107 houses full of kids are going to be playing.
It's a 2-acre park is what it is.
Okay. Thank you. Miss Maxine McCombs.
I'm short too. Maxine McCombs, my address is 2211 North Shriner Lane, Star, Idaho, and I am directly across the gully from the 2 lots that Mr. Walsh has purchased. And there's a couple of things I want to address. One is the wildlife area, which I think the pickleball court will interfere with. We've had fox and deer. The eagles used to roost in those trees along the gully. So we want to keep that wildlife corridor that we have had. We want to keep it so the wildlife can come through and get to the river, to drink water and whatever. But there is that issue. And then back when we did the Keys chart, the information that went with it specifically said that the buffer would be in the development. And that's what I've always counted on, was the development would have the buffer in their area. Or they would have 1-acre lots to abut the property in Shriner subdivision. And I just want you guys to follow the quotes, rules, or suggestions that you initiated, that you wrote down. Another thing that I want to address is the density now that they say they're going to do single family homes, and it's no longer going to be a 55 and older community. I think for a single family home, this is way too dense. I don't want this to look like, I think it's Celestial Village or the other subdivision that is right next to Celestial Village, because I want to say those lots are bigger than these, and they're single family homes. Young people have moved in, little kids, they have enough room to play in their backyard, not be out on the street. And now if you go to look at those subdivisions, there's car after car after car parked in the roadway. There's teenagers, and it's a mess. I just think you need to have off-road parking. And I mean, like a 3, what's the word I'm looking for? So you could park 3 cars in front of your house, because kids all have cars now. And I just think that if they're going to do single family homes, which I don't have a problem with, the density needs to be bigger. If they want to leave it as a 55 and older community, which would be quieter for us. I mean, I've actually called the county police because at midnight one night, because the intercom from the school on the outside was left on, and I heard people talking over there, and I called the police because I didn't know if they were breaking in or if what they were doing over there. But that's happened more than once. And I do hear the noise from the school. It's not that bad because it is a long way away, but when you put a subdivision with single family homes and lots of kids in it, it makes a lot of noise too. So I want that buffer area. Okay.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Any questions? Okay, no, ma'am. Thank you. Mr. Jeff Bachman.
Hello, I'm Jeff Bachman, Mayor, Council Chair. I live at 3301 North Polar Lane. I actually don't live around the subdivision, but there is a future approval to build a subdivision next to my 5 acres, and I would be the only landowner next to it.
So we need to make sure we focus on this subdivision. We can't talk about that
So
one.
with this subdivision here, my concern is what everybody's bringing up is density, and what the city council will set as a standard and density approved here will be assumed by future developers and what they can build next to other county land, which would be land like mine. So listening to all these people that own this land that borders the subdivision, I'd like to take into concern what they're saying as far as the buffer and density, because that will be applied to the future projects that affects other residents of Star like me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any questions of Mr. Bachman? Okay, thank you, sir. See Miss Katie Slater.
Hello, Honorable Mayor, City Council and staff. My name is Katie Slater. I live next door to all my neighbors here who are speaking tonight. And my
Katie,
address is
here you go.
2091 North Sunny Lane in Star. Briefly, all the property along.
So Miss Slater, I need you to speak in the microphone.
Oh.
Sorry.
Well, where I just showed you, that is all considered seasonable wetlands. And it's a litigated land in the past. So I came tonight to ask that the council would come. Well, I also wrote a letter to Sean asking who will be responsible for protection in place and any remediation required for the wetlands. Have permits been obtained from oversight agencies such as the Army Corps for impacted wetlands area. A wetland is also a seasonal wetlands, and that's what we have in that area because the wetlands come from the irrigation that's used for surface irrigation throughout the entire Star Acres area where all the lots are 5 acres and that's what they use. So though there may or may not have been seasonal wetlands available at the time that any studies were done. So my request is that the City Council have an additional condition of approval specifically to engage as the Department of Environmental Quality requested that Lance Holloway is the contact for that. And it is a statutory requirement where seasonal wetlands are impacted by development. And his letter from the Department of the State, Idaho State Department of Environmental Quality discussed that on page 51 through 55 of the City Council packet. And that would be left up to the council at this point to verify that that is in fact a seasonal wetlands. But I'd also like to take this one step further where the pickleball court area is at. That area I've seen from the aerial photos that there is trees and water that runs through there. And if you look at it further in the future, when fencing goes up and now all this land is disturbed and above it, north and where Maxine is at, you can see the trees in this area and where John is at, there is wetlands all over in that area. And this development proposal hacks away at it, throws up a fence and puts a slab of concrete at the edge of it. I'm kind of appalled by that. But that's all I would like to say at this time is that I do ask the City Council to go make this in further investigation for the wetlands. We have a lot of wild animals up in our area. There's herds of wild turkeys, there's eagles, there's a lot of birds, there's seasonal songbirds that fly through all year long. And we would really like to be able to preserve as much of that as we can. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Michael Keys. You still here? There you are. He likes this job so much, he didn't run and he just wants to testify now on everything, right?
Yeah, but I have to constrain myself to 3 minutes now.
That's right.
So, Honorable Mayor and councilors, Michael Keys, 338 South Long Bay Way. I wanted to remind the council that although they had agreed to adopt the two transition tables 14 months ago, and has yet to be done into the code. Several months ago, the council did adopt the transition table that's adjacent to the special transition area into our comprehensive plan. And I hope the councils remember that that did happen. So that should be taken into account, and I'll let city staff remind the council exactly what it was that was adopted into the plan in terms of the transition. I also wanted to, talk about the fact that what you're doing tonight is going to set potentially not a legal precedent, but certainly an attitudinal precedent. And I know that there are several special transition areas within STAR's comprehensive plan. The ones that we talk about and know about the most are the ones on the Ada County side. But there are a ton of them on the Canny County side. And as you know, STAR is moving in that direction. And I think that the people who live in the Canny County side are watching what this council does, and they're watching to see the commitment that you have and that you're making to take care of those special transition areas and to honor the commitment that I think we all made when we adopted the comprehensive plan and put those areas into it. It's not something that exists in the old plan. I don't know if that exists in anybody else's comprehensive plan, but I know that this city made a commitment to honor that. So I would ask that that as you make your decision tonight, that you just think about those things. I know one potential solution, for instance, if Sean will read the table back to you, that says that in the table that we adopt in the comprehensive plan, that the transition for rural transition areas, which I think is the county zoning, that are greater than 1 acre, says that there will be 1 acre lots in the transition. One potential solution is to take the 10 or so lots that abut that and maybe turn that into 2 or 3 1 acre lots. I think that would certainly meet the intent of the table. I think it would make the neighbors happy and would demonstrate the council's commitment to that they've made to honor these special transition areas. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. And then we had Miss Ann Ryan that was online, but I saw on message pot, she's still there.
So, Mr. Mayor, she has logged off, sent me a message that says, I think that everyone who's testified has covered everything that I was going to bring up.
Okay.
So I'm going to leave this.
Okay.
What's that?
Send that to Jacob so we can make sure that that's noted. All right, that's all that signed up to speak. It's the applicant's turn to rebut.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. I'll start out and others from the team can jump in as they like. Want to address some of the comments about wetlands and wildlife. We did do a wetlands study and it has been reviewed by the Corps, and we accept their jurisdictional determination, and they determined there's no jurisdictional wetlands within the development area, so there are no impacts. We are continuing to preserve that park up in the northwest corner in its natural state. That will help with the wildlife and with wetland preservation issues adjacent to those. So we think that will address the concerns. There was comments about wanting to preserve the wildlife corridor that comes down that gulch and into the foothill ditch, and that will be preserved through there. Partly to address that concern, and also the comments from Mr. Northrop about concern with noise, and Mr. Hershey's comments about that. We are certainly open to moving that pickleball court if that's the council's desire. We can move that into the more active central open space, and then it will have buffering from surrounding development, and so we're happy to do that. That will create even more natural open area there, and also certainly address the concerns about any noise that could be there. Additional comments that were made about traffic concerns with parking at the clubhouse. The neighbors to the north don't have any connectivity to our property, so they're not impacted by any of that. Nonetheless, we're open to providing some additional parking spaces there at the clubhouse to make sure that it can accommodate a variety of users. It's a small development. We do expect people to walk. It's very connected by pathways. And so we do expect that we'll have a lot of internal walking, but we're also happy to accommodate that. Councilmember Hershey, you asked for that 1-to-1 on the west side to provide that transition, and the developer is certainly agreeable to do that. That will cause us to move 2 lots that are on that side. We would prefer to move them internal to keep them away from all buffering surrounding property. Certainly, there's been a lot said about the buffer, and so and we've already addressed a lot of that, but I want to respond to a few of those comments. I did go back and listen to the October 5th hearing and listen carefully to everything that was said there, including by the council members. And Councilmember Nielsen, I thought you made some really appropriate comments then and tonight when you were talking about what the intent of the council has been when you've looked at these buffers, and it really is to protect the existing residential uses that are there. And so you look at the lots, and you talked about how because the lots that are controlled by the developer, they can accept that it's not a burden on them. But we're really looking at Mr. Northrup's lot. It is, and there's been a lot of testimony tonight about looking at these directly abutting lots, that they want to look at a lot to lot comparison. And I think that's what we do when we look at we only have one abutting lot. And so, Mr. Keys just talked about wanting to make sure that the city is enforcing the policies that it's said. I think you're going above and beyond with this development. The developer already came in with the open space, an over 2-acre park next to the only abutting rural residential lot. So as you look at this, and it doesn't set a precedent for future developments, it is a case by case, but I think you could be proud of this transition that's provided here, that it is over and above what you've called for in your both your comprehensive plan and what has been incorporated into your ordinance, what you've done in the past, what you'll consider in the future, and certainly the specific conditions on this property. So with the only lot that we're abutting, having no lots, no developable lots. So the size is irrelevant. There are none immediately adjacent to them. They are not even impacted by the lots because they've got this visual buffer because they are so far. And the lots here are not creating traffic for the neighbors to the north. So it's just a great, perfect circumstance where when you're looking at all the circumstances to consider, this is appropriate. And so it is developed within the plan that you guys adopted. It does have the density that you suggested here, and we meet your transition. And so the additional buffer that we're offering for the no build buffer is over and above. It's just gravy on top of all of that. That's not necessary for that owner, and they're willing to provide a disclosure in their property records if ever they do sell, so that they know, as Councilmember Nielsen noted in the last hearing, of course, they'll see the development anyway. And it's really about protecting the existing landowners, but we'll still provide that disclosure. We'll certainly make that no build area that we're offering, that additional 100 feet, legal and acceptable to your city attorney and your planner. If you want to impose that as a condition of approval, it is enforceable through the development agreement. If you don't want to impose it as a condition of approval, you also don't need to. It is not required by your policy because we do meet your policy. So it's just, if you want to, in fact, I think it's going to happen anyway, that they're going to provide that no build area. So it's going to be there regardless to provide that buffer to benefit everyone to the north. Those lots that are north of this development are 725 feet deep. So the other homes are very far away, creating that additional space. Anything else that anybody else wants to cover? Welcome other input. I think I've covered the comments I had, and welcome your questions.
Okay, any questions of the applicant?
Mayor Chadwick.
Councilwoman?
Regarding this totally different topic, floating feather and the sidewalk along there, we are looking at changing our width requirements in our code, and so changing it on materials and collectors to 7 feet. So would you be willing to expand the width of the sidewalk on floating feather to 7 feet?
Councilmember Simonson, yes, the developer is open. That will, assuming as long as ACHD allows it, we will do it.
And then can you talk about the trees? So I know you referenced that you are going to try to preserve them as, is that, so where there's going to be no building, I mean, those will obviously stay. And then are there other trees within the, in the buildable area? Are you going to move them, or is there none in that area?
Councilmember Simonson, yeah, we were talking about the natural area that'll be preserved, trying to keep that as natural as possible. And especially now without adding the pickleball facility, if that's moved, that'll create even and less development activity there. So certainly those will be preserved. There won't be trees preserved within developed pads. And then after that, it's up to any trees that are within the irrigation facilities are dictated by the irrigation districts. And so it's their call whether or not trees are removed or stay. We just comply with their preferences. So outside of those areas, we will be adding trees, of course, with our landscaping, consistent with your code, and anything that doesn't impact those developable areas or violate a irrigation district will be preserved.
Okay, thank you. And then because the pickleball court is moving, would it be possible to kind of close that, make like a loop with that trail, that pathway in there? So it really is a natural path trail that would connect into down on the south part of the natural area.
That's a nice idea. Yes, the developer can do that.
Okay. That's all I had. Thank you.
Any further questions of the applicant? Councilman Wheelock?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. So help me if I'm still new here, so give me a little bit of, so we went from 33 foot to 36, is that right?
That's correct.
And you just took that straight out of the lots, didn't downsize anything but the lots?
That's correct.
Okay, and is it still a gated community?
It is.
So you only have a sidewalk coming in on one side in the front?
I don't believe so. I think it's attached on both sides. Is that correct?
Your drawing says one, so
I'm looking to our engineer to confirm. Okay, he's looking.
Currently, we have sidewalk.
I think they need you in the microphone.
Joe Pockner, 5725 North Discovery Way. I'm with KM Engineering representing the Walsh Group. Just double checking on this. On the main entryway, we are only showing a pedestrian access on the one side. I think a lot of that was in with a gated community. A lot of times you have a gate for pedestrian as well. And so you try to keep that onto one side as well.
I think we would ask that you have it on both sides and figure that out.
We can do that.
Honestly, I mean, in reality.
That's the truth. And the little island that's past the gated part, I would like to see that removed. It's a hazard for kids crossing the road. It's,
I think we need to clarify though, before we remove that with Star Fire, because Star Fire made an indication that can count as your dual access in and out of the property with the islands. I don't know if it means both islands or just one. I know. That's what I want to clarify.
Yeah, I'd love to see
With
that.
So
That's just me, but I'd love to see that not in there as a hazard halfway across the entrance.
The only thing that serves is the center post for those gates you have to have a post to support those gates. And those become a traffic hazard if you don't have some bollard or some curbing to move those gates, to give separation from the driving path.
This is the second island. It looked like your gate is on the front island is what I thought.
No,
according
no.
to the pictures I've been looking at.
So the gate's going to be on the back island, right? Interior?
That is correct.
Okay, I just saw the depiction that I saw had a gate on the front.
Oh,
so it didn't look like that was a necessary amenity.
Yeah.
Okay, any further questions, comments? Okay, I have some, Deb.
I'm ready, Mayor.
So here we go. I am going to, we have, I know this is 3.8. I'm going to ask that you drop it to a 3. The reason why we have a problem. We do have, I mean, we got to be honest about what's happening with all the density that's been going on in our city, right? We have 5 access points on our entire network onto the state highway system. And the more we clog this up, and I know 3 is at the bottom end, it's 3 to 5 range, right? The more we clog it up with traffic, the worse we're making it. We don't have any, currently with ACHD, any current love from them to get our Floating Feather, our Beacon Light, our Star Road, our Canada Road, our Plummer Road connections even widened, right? And that's a concern to me. And so I have been big on dropping the densities on everything, on projects, because we have to fix that. We have the responsibility of fixing that. I know it will pencil out. I know a pro forma will work for you to sell these things at a higher price. It will increase the size of the lots. We could also drop the 9 lots at the top and create the buffer, because the intent, in my opinion, the intent of our code was to create the buffer within the project itself, not from a separate project. Okay, and when I look at the intent and the spirit of the law, I come from a legal family too, right? And I look at that. What does that mean? It's just like last year with our budget. We could have took every bit of our foregone last year with House Bill 389, and we chose not to because we were following the spirit of the law, right? On that. It's the same thing here. Let's put that buffer in there down below, wipe out those 9 places, and then you can create some other buffer within this project. I just have, you could ask my staff, I'm at a tipping point right now with our city on where we're at as far as development goes and how much we are adding into our overall structure. And this has always been a passion of mine that go from Floating Feather north, that we reduce the density to 1 to 3, and it got changed to 3 to 5. So that's where I'm at. I don't have a vote unless it's a tie. So you'll know that if it stays where it's at, if there is a tie where I'm going to vote, it was where I will deny it, if that's the case, because I think it needs to be changed. Changing from a product that was a 50 and older community to a product that we're going to have a lot more individuals involved. You know, I look at the population side of that. I mean, we're going up to about almost 300 people if you use as compass numbers based on what you currently have versus what it would have been before with a 50 and older community, right? And then the traffic volume that goes with that. We just got lots of things. We just need to work on this and fix this. I appreciate the fact that you pulled out that northern network and you put it in, and we're able to negotiate that with the properties to the Welton properties to the east. I think that solves both of you properties a big issue there, right? But I think we really need to look at dialing this down to 81 units, which you're losing 22 units, and making these lots bigger and a little bit more space in between the lots, because we've talked about the stack and pack mentality that we keep seeing and that I think we're done with in the city of Star, to be quite honest with you. You know, everybody on the council has spoken about that in the past, right? So I would like to see you guys drop that down to a strict R3, removing those 9 lots up at the top with the follow the intent and spirit of the law, and add that sidewalk that Councilman Wheelock was talking about on the opposite side of coming into that development. So that's where I'm at. I know it's last minute, but I wanted to see where it went first before I spoke.
May I add, Mr. Mayor?
You could absolutely, we're still open. So Councilman Hershey.
Yeah, I was gonna, first off, thank you. Yeah, I was actually going to say this, almost the same thing. I wanted to see this come down to a 3. And the reason being is I have heard both sides of the argument on this 100-foot buffer, and I am just not able to convince myself that I can make something enforceable on some property that's not even before me, on some property that's not even in my city. It just seems to be too much of a stretch for me. I don't want to impose any regulation on property that is not before me for annexation, platting, or at least zoning. So that 100-foot buffer, even though I understand the spirit of where you're coming from, I think when I was discussing the tables, when I was discussing transitions, And I am huge on transitions. I mean, even just when it comes to anything existing, and I appreciate you taking out the two that would line up. I hope that stays, but that buffer as identified in the 5th of October meeting, I do not believe has been satisfied with the buffer offered. And therefore, if you're willing to take the recommendations the mayor said, which I fully am with, I'd be willing to table so you have a better chance to come back.
So I know that's a Slavo round that I threw out there at the 24th hour, but I want you to think about that talk. I mean, we don't have to close the hearing quite yet.
Mayor Chadwick.
Councilman Nielsen.
So I appreciate the discussion around the spirit of the law, and I wanted to talk about the spirit of that as well. And I don't know that I see it differently than you do, but I think that I see it maybe additionally, because really the spirit of our transition, that we've done in the past and that we've got in our comprehensive plan is that transition between property owners. And we've got between 500 and 700, some odd feet between this property and all these others. That's an incredible amount of transition. And so as I consider our code calling for analysis on a case-by-case basis, I think that's where I landed that there is sufficient transition built into this. Where I really appreciate your comments is really on the density reduction. I think getting down closer to that 3 units to the acre density is appropriate. I spoke even in the last hearing about those 9 lots across the top, maybe making those 1 acre lots and things like that too. I think all those options should be out there on the table. And of course, doing that would satisfy both the reduction of density and any transition that people may still want in addition to the 500 to 700 feet that already is there. So that I don't know that that's a question for the applicant, but my rambling is intended to give you guys time to think and contemplate on what he's already said.
Deb's a quick thinker. So,
Mr. Mayor,
do you have a question of her?
a comment to Kevin's comment.
Okay. We're kind of deliberating, but we don't want to deliberate yet. We want her to be able to answer.
I will quit then.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I guess
Unless you
Mayor,
want to hear what he
I
has to say.
appreciate having all the feedback because I mean, obviously we're gonna have to take this into account and try to respond to it. So, I mean,
Okay.
I
Go ahead.
appreciate it if you're willing.
Just because you own the 2 lots that are touching those 9 lots doesn't mean that they are not transitional. He sells them, there's still no transition there anymore. Even if the owner knows it, that doesn't mean that they're not transitional.
Councilmember Wheelock, could I respond to that one?
Sure,
We
absolutely.
will ensure that that stays there even upon transition of ownership.
Yeah, no, I'm not talking about the buffer. I'm talking about the subdivision lots, and I understand if you leave that buffer, I'm good with that, but it doesn't mean that there's not a transition that is adjusted in our, I guess we're talking about the spirit of the law, right? And spirit of what we intend for our transitions between subdivisions and rural lots. And I guess that's what I'm saying. Just because you own them doesn't mean you can't sell them. And
No,
the new
I understand
owner that is living with all those bigger lots is still.
And the difference,
impacted
the
by
distinction that I make there, Councilman Wheelock, is that as we discussed, even putting this transition overlay district in place to begin with, it was to protect existing homeowners. And so the difference is there's not an existing homeowner on that lot, and anybody who buys it knowing full well exactly where everything is.
Yeah, and I'm back to the lifestyle of that subdivision versus that subdivision.
Sure. I get it. I really do.
Complete with less covenants and animals and all the things that come with living in the country.
Yep. I sold our 50-acre farm and it's now a neighborhood too. I know exactly where you're at.
Yeah.
Can I have 2 minutes?
So let me do this. We'll do a recess for 5 minutes so you guys can talk about it and then we
Okay.
can come back and discuss it, and it gives everybody up here a chance to take facilities break.
Thank you.
Does that work? So
That's great.
so we're
Thank
gonna
you.
recess at 8:50 and 8:55 we'll come back.
Appreciate it.
Okay, we're unmuted? Okay. We're going to call this Star City Council meeting back to order. It's 8:58. And we'll turn the floor back over to Miss Deb.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council, for the time and for the opportunity to hear some comments and respond. So we appreciate that. What the developer is willing to do and hoping that this addresses your concerns, to combine the concerns we've heard about the transition as well as a reduction in overall density. They are willing to give up those 9 lots that border the rural residential at the top, and convert that to open space as requested. They will also lose 2 lots down on the western boundary to make that 1-to-1. And so they will fully address all of the bordering properties. Losing those lots takes them down to a 3.4. So we ask for your consideration to get to address the primary concerns we've had, and also reduce the overall density, still well within your planned density ranges, well within the traffic accommodation that's approved by ACHD, help provide some additional support for, I think this is a great location for this density as is called for in your plan, but I hear your comments, Mayor and council members, about what your overall desire. So we're trying to find that right balance and really address that transition as well at the same time. So ask for your consideration of that. Also, we understand that the fire chief is not amenable to removing the island. So
Yes,
like
the
that
fire chief said it
placement.
must be there.
So just
We just leave it to rookies though, right? Gotta learn it.
did I cover it?
Okay, any questions of the applicant? With their proposal of reducing 11 lots to get to 3.4?
Mayor Chadwick.
Councilman Nielsen.
I appreciate your deliberation and your considerations on that. I think that creates a really, really good way forward. I guess my question is, why wouldn't you just turn those into 1 acre lots, those 9, instead of losing them?
Mayor and Councilmember Nielsen, I think it's a variety of things. For one, the dimensions don't work there. It would be not a practical building site. It wouldn't be a viable product that you could put there, because you'd end up with 400 by 100. It'd just be a really weird shape. So it's not viable at an acre. Your code also calls for 1/2 acre lots, and that does get a little better, but we were actually just trying to come further. So we did discuss 1/2 acre there, which is perfectly within the range of your transition policy and the language in your code, and would be more viable there. So if you like that design better, that certainly worked for us too. We were just trying to come further on the density. If we flipped those to 1/2 acre and took out the 2 lots on the west, we got down to 3.5, and we were just trying to give a little more on something we thought you cared about with this transition. So either of those works for us.
Well, and even considering more than just the 9 lots, if all of the lots along there were converted to 1/2 acre, you could still get that density down to 3.4, or, at least closer to 3, and maintain all that. I guess I don't know what would replace those 9 lots. Are you thinking of landscaping and things like that, or leaving it natural? So one of the other things that goes through my mind are just the costs of homeowners associations and maintenance of open space like that is rarely used. The natural park there is great, but I'd rather see our density go down and yet remain buildable, so that we reduce that burden on the homeowners association.
Councilmember Nielsen, those are good practical points. And it does create you do have the opportunity then to maintain a cleaner line there. So I think that the developer is also amenable to doing the 1/2 acre lots, but getting down to the same density reduction.
Okay. Any further comments? So I appreciate you coming back and looking at that and making those adjustments.
Mayor
Councilman-
Chadwick,
I'm
sorry.
Councilwoman.
So how many more lots would you have to take out to get to 3?
I think the
The
mayor's math
3.0,
was 20.
11?
Yeah, it was 20. I'm sorry. How many was originally? 103? Yeah, and so that's 22 total lots it would be to get down. So they took out half of the lots that we talked about. I'll drop.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Any further questions or comments of Ms. Deb? Hit your button though.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, still learning how to do this. And I don't know whether to say this now or later or to hold my opinion. But I would support the mayor's going back to 3. I haven't brought up density because everybody else had. My issues were still the distance. And I think you've addressed that, but I think with the widening of the streets, you made the lots smaller. And there's just smaller lots rather than less density. So I would support going all the way to 3 to an acre in my vote, I guess.
Okay.
Mayor, may I
Yep,
respond just
absolutely,
briefly?
Ms. Deb. Yep.
You know, I guess what I would say, and developer can add to this if they want to, is ask the council's consideration of the highest density and then some flexibility to create and come back to Sean with a plan that meets that density. And so hopefully you can, you know, given, I mean, we've got these small lots just to our west, and given the density that's outlined in your plan, given the proximity to the schools and the capacity in Floating Feather, this is a good place for what you've planned here. So I guess as high as you can feel comfortable, we would ask for that accommodation. We've tried to come up with a plan that we thought was a reasonable, getting you down, certainly down below what we had wanted, but closer to what you'd asked for. But if that's still too much, I guess we'd ask for as high a density as you think is appropriate here, and let us design that with come back to meet that density.
Okay.
Mayor Chadwick.
Councilman Nielsen.
You know, I think coming down to the 3.4 density meets a couple of objectives where this is now no longer a 55 and over development being adjacent to a school. I think a little higher density is appropriate here. It's more families that can indeed walk to school, and it is close to you know, some of those outlets coming off of Floating Feather and getting out to either Highway 16 or Highway 44. So I think it's an appropriate area to have a little bit higher density, and I'd support it at the 3.4 level. I think we've overcome several things here tonight, and I don't want to see us table and have to work on it again for a third time.
Okay. Any further questions of Ms. Deb? Any further comments, Ms. Deb, before
No, thank you for your consideration.
Okay. So we will, do you have questions of staff, or staff have questions of council before I close it? Okay, so I'm going to close the public hearing. It is 9:06, and we'll go to council deliberations. I know we've deliberated a lot already, so rehash.
We didn't deliberate. We asked very long questions.
Okay, schematic.
I'll go ahead and start then.
Okay.
When I first saw this project, it was the 55 and older, and I brought it up then about you know, it being closer to the school, and I would like to see a family friendly neighborhood close to the school so that kids can walk there. And I think that, you know, I appreciate the applicant's you know, willingness to come down in the density. I think it gets us closer to where we should be because of, you know, traffic and our schools, you know, the enrollment rates and all of that. But I think that this density, you know, it fits here. And I think that, you know, we have a lot of, you know, really good things that will come in this development as well. So I'd support it.
Okay. Any further comments, motions, discussion?
We did discuss, oh, sorry, let's see far with those. The path in the pickleball, by the way, I love pickleball, so I wasn't going to say anything on that, but it does make a weird noise. That path, you mentioned, Councilwoman Solomon, to have it loop around and connect, and they said that was pretty cool.
Correct.
So I think that should be thrown in there for sure. And moving the pickleball court more in a direction closer to their development and away from the borders. And also I am supportive of the 11 lots being removed. That will account to make the buffer, that will account to make the lot lineup that I was looking for. And when it comes to that main entrance, the fire chief has the final say.
Okay, any further comments, questions?
Mayor Chadwick, I'm
Councilman Nielsen?
gonna make a motion here. Oh. Your recorder working?
Well, so
Then can I add another comment real quick? Unless it's not recording, or is it?
I'll yield my time to.
okay, Councilman Hershey?
When it comes to the lot sizes, I actually don't have a problem at 3.4 if the sizes are the way they are. Reason being, it is near a school. And, you know, it's a middle school, and I'm just, I certainly wasn't at my peak earning potential when my kids were in middle school. So affording a house near a school like that would have been wonderful. But so I don't have a problem with that. And I like the fact the density is below 3.5, so it fits better. I like the buffer, and I like, basically, I think the compromise is going to be good.
Okay. Councilman Nielsen?
Thank you. So I just want to make sure that we have all of the conditions here. And Mr. Mayor, could you go back?
Want staff to?
Could you go back to the slide that listed those check marks out?
Oh, at the very beginning?
Yep. I just want to go through these and make sure that these are still applicable. So emergency 36 foot. So my motion is going to include, in addition to the 36 foot, the sidewalks on both sides. The easement's good, paved pathway to the school, free market housing, no floodplain. Yep. All right, so.
And moving so we're moving the pickleball court, extending that pathway at the top where it loops.
So I move that we approve this application with the following conditions. That the pickleball is moved out of the natural park and into a more central place in the development. That there is a trail through the natural park that kind of loops around the houses there and connects from the north to the south. The sidewalk width to 7 foot wide along Floating Feather, as long as ACHD is in agreement with that, it gets built to that width. That half-acre lots are put along the northern boundary, and as many as get the development down to 3.4 units to the acre. Also taking into consideration the lots on the western boundary that they will line up with existing neighborhood lots. Did I say that in an intelligible manner?
Sean, anything that?
Did you mention the double sidewalk?
Yeah,
at the interchange up there?
you didn't.
Okay,
Yeah.
I said on both sides.
He said on both sides, yeah.
And the trail within the natural space, did you want that? paved?
Correct, looped, oh, paved.
Paved or natural
Or natural.
surface?
I didn't designate. I
Probably
guess
should,
if you're asking my opinion, it should be natural.
And
That's all I had.
okay, I wanna, so the pathway, we did discuss this in the previous hearing, the pathway for the school to be concrete and not, well, when we say pave.
Well, that's the
That could be
path to the
asphalt,
school. This is the
right.
path through the natural.
No, I know, but I just want to make certain that it's not asphalt, it's concrete, because the intent of that entire pathway is to be concrete when we go through the
So
cemetery.
the paved path to the school will be concrete.
Okay, thank you.
And
Did you say that? Matching lot lines on the west side?
the west side.
Yeah,
Yes, I
okay.
did.
I think you got it all.
Anything else, Mr. Sean?
Yeah, I did say the 7 foot out front too,
7 foot, a long floating feather,
as long as ACHD is good. with that.
agreeance with it, yeah.
I just have a quick question for you, Councilman Nielsen.
Yes.
You said the half acre lots on the north, is that including removing those 9 or you just want them to all be half acre?
Not removing the 9. So they become half acre.
So the northern section of the property to be half acre lots, which would be,
That's in compliance with our transition code. They to be 1/2 to 1 acre lots, the buffer transition overlay district.
Think of those lots now. I'm just wondering, how many would that put across? I was assuming they were just going to be gone.
My estimation would be about 2.5.
So we'd go from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8,
I think there's 15.
15 to about 2, 2.5, that'd be it up there. I'm just making, I just want to make sure that that I am keeping my understanding of how I'm interpreting transitional, and half acre is fine. I just want to know how many houses are going to be up on the top. You said 2, 3?
I think it's
Oh,
3.
Oh, I should just
Five,
take it.
five, 5 to 1 based on what's up there.
Oh, okay, so it'd be much more wide, and
Right.
your reasoning for that is because you don't want to just cause a big strip of nothing.
Right.
All right.
That somebody has to pay for an area.
Sean?
Mr. Mayor, would the maker of the motion give the flexibility to the developer to make that open space if they did not want to do those as half acre?
Yes.
Just wanted to put it out there in case
Okay.
don't work.
Flexibility is there, but encouraged to limit the cost of ongoing maintenance in those areas. So with those conditions, I find that this application meets the intent and purposes of our comprehensive plan and all requirements for annexation into the city of Star and development.
Okay, we got a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I have a question.
Councilman Wheelock, go ahead.
With the note, they have no waivers for setbacks. So what does that mean for the sides? Is that the 5 and 10?
Yes,
If it's 10, if it's 2 stories, it's 10 feet.
it follows our code on that, yes.
Okay.
Did we want to tie anything in there about making sure the density doesn't go up?
Well, like 92 buildable lots, which equals 3.4.
Okay, so
Well, I would have, my motion doesn't include a number of buildable lots. It's the 3.4 density.
okay,
Maximum.
I'm just making sure.
Okay. We got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. Roll call vote.
Roll call.
I'm gonna roll call it.
Hershey,
Aye.
Wheelock.
No.
Solomon,
Aye.
Nielsen.
Aye.
Okay, that motion carries 3 to 1. Okay. All right. We will give everybody a few seconds to get out. We are going to table item 7B. Do we have to open that to table it? Or do we just move it? 7B, because we're moving it out to February 15th.
You don't have to open it, but you do need to table it to a date certain or else you'll have to republish.
Okay, all right. So I entertain a motion to table item 7B. I just need everybody to go out in the hall to chat, please. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we table item 7B, the public hearing for Spring Tree Estate subdivision until the 15th of February.
Okay, we got a motion. We have a second.
Second.
We got a motion, a second. Councilwoman Solomon seconded that. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. Roll call.
Hershey,
Aye.
Wheelock.
Aye.
Solomon,
Aye.
Nielsen.
Aye.
That motion carries. That application has been tabled to February 15th. We're going to move to item 7C, our executive session. So I need a motion to go in executive session based off of what we got written here. From
Mayor
somebody.
Chadwick, so moved.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion, a second. Any further discussion? Roll call. Do we have to say it or
I
you
was
can't
just gonna
say?
ask to make sure that the minutes reflect the actual.
Actual 74-206 F.
Yeah.
Mayor Chadwick, I move that we enter executive session 74-206F to communicate with legal counsel for the public agency to discuss legal ramifications of and legal options for pending litigation or controversies not yet being litigated, but imminently likely to be litigated.
Okay, we got a motion. We got an amended second.
Yes.
Okay, any further discussion?
Hershey,
Roll call.
Aye.
Wheelock,
Aye.
Salmonson,
I.
Nielsen.
Aye.
Okay, that motion carries. We'll boot everybody out. I'm sorry, at 9:18, we went into executive session.